Hello, all you wonderful Authors Love Readers podcast listeners out there. I'm so happy that you're here. Before this episode starts, I want to talk a little bit about Patreon. And the first thing I want to say is we have a charter Patreon supporter, Linda D. I'm so excited that we have a Patreon supporter and that she was the one who broke the ice and started us. And amazingly, then we have two more supporters who came right behind her. We have Jennifer S. and Laura D. We hope more of you will join Lisa, Jennifer, and Laura in becoming a Patreon supporter of Authors Love Readers podcast. And I wanted to talk a little bit about why I'm asking for your support of the podcast through Patreon donations. Let me tell you, it's really hard for me to ask. As my friends would tell you, I'm not good at asking for help at all. The reason that I set up for the Authors Love Readers podcast, it is not for me as an individual author. It's strictly for the podcast. I would love for the podcast to become self-supporting because I've been supporting it to this point. The expenses include having the podcasts edited, because you'll be surprised to know we talk longer than you actually listen. And I have a monthly fee for hosting the files because these are big files. And what I would love is to have people donate, a couple dollars a month would be terrific. $2 a month would be 50 cents an episode. It would be a sign of support and it would help defray some of these costs. So that would be the way I could keep the podcast going on. And I hope you'll consider that. Thank you. Hi. Welcome to this week's Authors Love Readers podcast, where we delve into the stories behind the stories. We're asking authors questions, some of them fun, some of them serious, and from their answers, you're going to learn things you never knew about the people who write the stories you love. My name is Patricia McLinn. I'm your host and designated question asker. Now, let's start the show. Hello, Authors Love Readers podcast listeners. This is Patricia McLinn. I'm usually your host for interviews. This week, I'm going to be doing basically all the talking, filling you in on some news that's going on in the writing world and the reading world as well. It affects readers very strongly. So, I also wanted to say thank you so much to our supporters on Patreon. Go back and forth on the pronunciation. We really, really appreciate that. And we need that support, both for the little bit of money, because you can do as little as $1 a month. But we also need to know that people are out there listening and caring about the podcast. It takes time, it takes money, it takes effort, it takes attention, it takes all those things that occupy us. And I, at least, need the encouragement. I also think the other people involved with the podcast would appreciate it too. So we hope very much that more of you will help support us and join us. Listening, share it, tell other people about it, leave us a review, especially at iTunes, but any place that you listen, a review and a rating goes a long way. It encourages us. It helps other people find the podcast. And all those are good things. So please, that's the end of the begging portion of this podcast. Okay, so, oh boy, there is lots of news to talk about. We will start by letting you know that there has been a huge case of alleged plagiarism that has come to light, specifically in the romance writing world. And as often happens, it has spawned a number of side issues. But let's start at the beginning with this case of plagiarism. It starts with a sharp-eyed reader, and it almost always does when plagiarism comes to light. It is almost always because a reader has recognized that she has read those words before. So bless you, all you sharp-eyed readers out there. The authors really appreciate this. So this reader wrote an email to a well-known and well-respected historical romance author named Courtney Milan that said, I think somebody's copied your book. And Courtney, who is, as it happens, a lawyer who has clerked for 2 Supreme Court justices and who has taught intellectual property classes, went and investigated this allegation by the reader and looked at passages. And as she says on her website, and I quote, "After investigation, I have concluded that Christiane Sarouya has copied, word for word, multiple passages from my book, The Duchess War." Courtney also tweeted, and on her website, she listed and showed these passages that were copied word for word. And she tweeted about it. Christiane Sarouya, who is identified as a Brazilian woman on her social media, also says that she has been a lawyer for 20 plus years and said she had written, can you hear my sarcastic air quotes here? 30 some books in the past 6 to 8 years. I've seen different figures posted about that. And now all her sites that I tried to find are down. They're no longer available. So I cannot confirm those figures. However, screenshots were taken by a number of authors. And one of Courtney's comments that certainly cuts to the core of this is that she said, quote, "If I were an unethical plagiarist and I was looking to plagiarize a romance author, I would pick literally anyone except the one who clerked for the Supreme Court, taught intellectual property as a law professor, and doesn't back down from a fight." Close quote. Well, the choices made by Christiana Sarouya become increasingly questionable as this goes on. They were horrible from the start, and they just get worse. Another quote from Courtney. She says, "We're almost certainly going to find out that I'm not the only one she's plagiarized." Well, Courtney should go into the profit business. Was she ever right about that? So Courtney also tweeted about this, and on Twitter in particular, other readers and authors took up the challenge and started checking the books that were published under that name, Christiane Sarouya. And thanks to these many sharp-eyed readers and authors who did the work, and it is tedious work, and shared their findings, so far, on the last count I saw, 34 books, 34 authors, 51 books have been identified as plagiarized by titles published under the name Christiane Sarouya. And for good measure, also plagiarized were 2 recipes, 3 articles, and 3 websites. So she sort of tossed those in. The 34 authors include, in addition to Courtney Milan, Nora Roberts, Diana Gabaldon, Tessa Dare, and Nalini Singh. Also, the inimitable Anne Gracie, who has been a guest on this show, and I hope you have heard her episode. In addition to Anne, I personally know and like a number of the authors whose work has been stolen. I am just sick about this because no matter what happens, it is an intrusion and a violation of their creative lives. And it is going to take time away from their creativity and energy and emotion. And none of that is right. I have known a number of other authors who have been plagiarized, mostly in traditional publishing. And they were largely left to deal with it. I can't say entirely that they were left to deal with it on their own, but they were told by the publishers to not talk to anybody about it. So they were isolated. And I don't know of but one or two instances where the publisher took it seriously enough to really go after the person who plagiarized. And I don't know of any of the authors that I know personally who were plagiarized who have been satisfied with the outcome. They were raked over the coals in a lot of different ways. So this is never, never a good outcome. The one small grace is that because there are 34 authors, they have each other. There is some support, not only from the broader community, but by banding together. The hope is that they will have support from each other in pursuing this. Now, where can you find out more about these specific instances? I highly recommend you read Courtney Milan's blog about this. She has a couple blogs. Nora Roberts has also blogged about it. Tessa Dare has been tweeting about it, and she's had some very interesting tweet threads. Also, Christy Caldwell's Facebook post. Christy is another author who was stolen from in this instance, and very unfortunately, it's not the first time. Also, it was not the first time Nora Roberts has been plagiarized. Do, as I said, recommend you read her blog. And please, please, please remember that in the instance that Nora talks about in one of her blogs, she was plagiarized by Janet Daly. I've twice heard people in bookstores not being able to remember now who did what and which one. I remember these two names, but I don't remember, did this one do the plagiarizing or did that one? So please remember that Nora Roberts was the one who was plagiarized. And yes, I did tell the people in the bookstore which was which, because it's deeply unfair. I know it can be confusing because Daly is still being published, but please, please keep it straight of who plagiarized and who was plagiarized. And help other people keep it straight. be like me and talk to people in bookstores. They look a little startled at first, but they get over it. And I also wanted to, if you do follow up with some of these other sources, you will see comments about plagiarism and copyright infringement. And I wanted to talk just a little bit about that. Plagiarism can be seen as an ethical breach. It is presenting someone else's work, including it can be a piece of that work, as your own. And to my great delight, I went digging into the history and found Merriam-Webster dictionary, which says that plagiarize and plagiarism come from a Latin word, which means kidnapper. So think about that. These are people who are kidnapping someone else's words. Copyright infringement is a legal breach. It is infringing on the legal rights that come along with copyright. And those rights, now remember, this is all legal stuff, so I'm sort of simplifying here, but they are generally listed as reproducing or copying the work, distributing the work, creating a derivative work, displaying it publicly, or performing it publicly. Now, I can hear you, some of you thinking, okay, wait a minute, you talked about trademark a while back, and there was a big kerfuffle about trademark. That's true, but this is copyright. Trademark is a word or phrase or symbol and or a design that identifies and distinguishes the source of the goods of one party from those of others. That's how the USPTO defines trademark. A copyright protects original works of authorship, and that includes literary, dramatic, musical, and artistic works. And then they say, such as poetry, novels, movies, songs, computer software, and architecture. I didn't know that about architecture. I was very interested to find that out. The United States Constitution explicitly grants the Congress the power to create copyright law. We made it into the Constitution. And that comes under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 8, known as, surprisingly, the Copyright Clause. Why did the founders think it was worth putting into the Constitution? Well, they say, and this is a quote, to promote the progress of science and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. Now, an author has the copyright in his or her work when it takes physical form. And that can include letters on a screen, especially when they're saved. So it can be a computer file. It does not have to be a printed out version. So as soon as your creation takes that physical form, you have the copyright. But then there's another whole layer or level called registering your copyright. And your case becomes a lot better if you have been plagiarized, if you have registered your copyright. Now, what does that mean? Well, it means dealing with an arm of the U.S. government called the U.S. Copyright Office. It means paying money and filling out a form and waiting for 6 to 8 months. Government, remember? It also means that when they suddenly decide that having a thumbnail cover and 2 sentences of text about the next book in the series, that it makes what you submitted not a single book of 90,000 words with a 2-sentence teaser, but in fact 2 books or works, as they call them. So you forfeit your payment and have to resubmit, and your assistant, in trying to catch up with the backlog of books not copyrighted by your former publisher, who never bothered to tell you they didn't copyright books, has done 10 books like this, and they are all caught in that change. And so you have to resubmit and pay double fees for 10 books. Bitter? No, not me. I save the real bitterness for pirates. Oh, yeah, there's more fun in this. Those are the people who steal your entire work, put it up online, sometimes for free, sometimes not. Sometimes they ask for donations. Isn't that sweet? They steal things, put them up to be shared, and then ask for donations. Sometimes they operate in closed groups where people share these stolen works because, hey, they love reading, and tough luck to the author who needs to make a living. If only the author could steal back from those pirates, and some of them make scads of money this way. They are making scads of money by stealing. Because, if we could steal back, that might help those authors who just love paying their mortgage. But those sort of sites where they're making scads of money, I believe, are in the minority. Most sites that are on the internet saying, oh, here, download a free book, are actually scams on the would-be user. They often don't have any books at all. This is whether they're torrent or other sites that claim they're offering free books. Again, stolen books that they have taken. They are actually phishing scams. So the user who's trying to avoid paying a few dollars for a book instead goes to these illegitimate sites and has their information and often their entire identity stolen. It doesn't punish the other pirates or the people with these phishing scams, but it is a tiny bit of poetic justice. Don't you want to be an author now? This is a part of all the wonderful things that we deal with. So let's get back to Christiane Sarouya and the 34 authors and 51 books and all the rest plagiarized and titles published under that name. After Courtney Milan's posts and tweets, the Christiane Sarouya account came back and said, and I'm paraphrasing here because, again, her material's been taken down, but she said in essence that this account said, I'm a lawyer. I would never do such a thing. It must have been My ghostwriter. Actually, I think she said ghostwriters plural. And I read that and said, what? What? Ghostwriters? Now, can you hear the next can of worms opening? Okay, first, that can of worms within the Christian Sorority situation, and then we'll go a little bit broader. There are several people who have self identified as ghostwriters who've said that they have done work for or had been contacted to do work for the Christian Sorority name. And they said that how it worked was that Christiane sent them chunks of scenes or dialogue or descriptions and said, here, blend this together into something. I'm, I mean, oh, well, okay. So the ghostwriters are saying, and they appear to have been saying it in nearly simultaneous and independent accounts, which lends more credence to what they're saying, that Christiane sent them plagiarized chunks to mash together into some sort of something that then she posted as a book. This is also sometimes termed mosaic plagiarism. It's as opposed to lifting an entire book or large chunks of a book, of a single book, the plagiarist takes from multiple sources and creates a plagiarism patchwork, or has ghostwriters do it, unwittingly or not. Okay. I don't know if you're following me. I hope you are following this because it's pretty wild. First point in reacting to this, the ghostwriters did it. It is not an excuse, good or otherwise, especially if the ghostwriters are saying, you gave us the material, which it now turns out was plagiarized. Second point, there is a long history of ghostwriters, especially in nonfiction, say for a celebrity's memoir or a business book where somebody has a really good idea but they have no capacity to write. That has long been seen as legitimate. It makes sense. Sometimes those ghostwriters are credited um, with an author tag or as told to line or something like that. Often they are not, and they have signed a contract that covers those areas. Third point, in fiction, there's also something called work for hire. Now, frequently a publisher or a book packager comes up like with a concept and hires writers to write the books on a work for hire basis. The publisher or book packager then almost always holds on to the copyright. The author does not have that copyright. The individual writer might get his or her name on the cover, or it might be a case like the Nancy Drew Hardy Boys books where many writers contribute under one, in quote, author name. These contracts, whether they're straight work for hire or some hybrid through the book packager or publisher, can vary wildly. Some work for hire contracts can be very beneficial for the writer, sort of like some paths across the melting ice on a pond can get you to the other side carefully. Ghostwriting, in my view, is crossing that pond in a snowmobile. The chances of it working are a lot smaller than the chances of this not ending well. Fourth point, as you might have guessed from that previous comment, I'm not a big fan of ghostwriting, especially in fiction. As a reader, I want the name of the person who actually wrote the book to be on the cover. It's just kind of bottom line for me. For instance, the new books coming out under the Robert B. Parker brand say clearly by and the name of the author. That's all there on the cover. Nothing is hidden. As a reader, you know what you are getting. Now, to me, this is very different from a pseudonym, where you have a consistent pseudonym. I use a writing name. I had to when I started, both because the publisher wanted that and because I had already had a professional identity in journalism that I wanted to keep those two worlds separate. But if somebody picks up a book by Patricia McLinn, they know that I have written it. And there's no confusion. It's just being clear about what's going on. Well, I don't knowingly read fiction that's been ghostwritten. I would read books under the Robert B. Parker brand because I would know what and who I was getting. Fifth point. Why? This is what I keep coming back to about ghost writing. Why? I just don't get it. I really and truly don't get it. What is the point of publishing a book if it's not what you've written? It makes absolutely no sense to me. In case it wasn't clear enough in the discussion of copyright plagiarism and pirates, the publishing part of this process is a pain in the neck and other body parts. It's sustainable to me only because that's how you get your story out into the world. Writing that story, it's both infinitely harder and much, much more fun than the publishing part. It's creating. And to that extent, it's playing. The rest of it is pure work. So even past my view that you should not put your name on what's not yours, why on earth would you have someone else do the fun, creative part? Sixth point. Some people presenting themselves as ghostwriters have tweeted, commented, posted that ghostwriters are being attacked, including the claim that this situation being brought to light is going to take food from their children's mouths. Another has said he both uses ghostwritten material and ghostwrites himself. Huh? I really don't get this. Why? If you're writing something that is worth someone else presenting to the world as their work, then why in the world would you not present it as your own work? I just don't get this. Those are my characters, my stories, my ideas. I'm not sharing them with anybody but my readers. As I was preparing this podcast, a family member reminded me that according to those who are around to hear it, my first multi-word phrase as a little biddy was "do it my own self." So I suspect I am never going to get this. It just does not compute. Seventh point. Now I'm going to take that back because this is bigger than simply being a seventh point under talking about ghostwriters. This is the giant economy size, not just can of worms. It is a tub of snakes. You might have noticed I've skirted around saying that Christian Saruya is a person, is an individual. Certainly, I won't say is an author. I don't know this for a fact, but there are a number of scams, especially in Kindle Unlimited. In fact, to my knowledge, only in Kindle Unlimited, where it's not an individual writing a book, it is a writer mill. And it can be multiple people assuming a single name, or it can be it could be conceivably one person, but they're telling you they're Christian Saruya, a lawyer from Brazil. In fact, they're a male machinist from Kokomo, Indiana. So I'm a little leery of this, and again, it's a corrupting of what has been a long practice of pseudonyms and pen names for various reasons. As I said, I had to use one. My initial publisher required it, but I also liked it and continued using it because of coming from these two different worlds and having that be clear. And if somebody addressed me, I knew which world they were coming from. And it's been used for a long time. Um, and I don't see any problem with that. Where it gets strange is when you're also a personage or a persona, and presenting yourself as somebody, and being personable and accessible on social media, and presenting yourself as something that you're not. That to me makes me uncomfortable. What I present myself as, in a slightly different name on social media, is pretty much who I am. Certainly, the dog is is true and accurate. Now, the writer mills do a number of things, and this comes back to, why should readers care about all this arcane publishing business stuff? Well, you are not always getting what you think you're getting, number one. And that bothers me. I've written a blog, and I have posted the URL for it, both on my Facebook and page, and I've tweeted it, and it will be included in the show notes here. That talks about ways that you can spot scammers, and they are on Kindle Unlimited. I am not aware of these happening else on any of the other vendors. Now, I think it stinks to high heaven that you, as a reader, are required to be a detective to not be scammed. And Amazon could fix this. They definitely could, but they have chosen not to this point, and given no indication that that's going to change. One of the ways that these writer mills work is they'll have a closed group. Sometimes possibly a public group, but they have a group of fellow business people, and somebody will write, say a thriller, and they publish it, and they think that it sort of has run its course for them, so they sell that thriller to someone else in the group, knowing full well that the other person in the group will take that work, change names, pronouns, maybe a little other stuff, and put it up as a small town romance, say. I don't know. I can't imagine how this actually works, but this is what they're doing. And then this newly retitled work, I won't call it a book, is put out there, and both the original purveyor of the work and the new owner and the other people in this group will go, "Oh, look, there's this new book out. Oh, isn't it wonderful? Here's this my friend's release, and isn't this terrific?" So, one of the things I want to say to you all as readers is, if you are reading something and you think, "Hey, I read this before," it might not be your memory being bad. You might not have picked up the same book, um, with the same title and the same author. It might be feeling familiar for different reasons. So that's another caution. And just, and then there is also this massive use of ghostwriters, where someone purports to be an author, puts his or her name on the books, but in fact is buying the words from ghostwriters, often paid quite poorly, and putting that up there. Now, there are some people who are saying this is okay because readers are buying these stories. And one of the reasons they're buying the stories, I believe, is because doing this allows these business people who put their name on a book and have not actually written it. So they are not authors. They're not writers. I don't know what else to call them other than business people. Because they're doing this through ghostwriters and paying other people to do it, they can produce book after book after book after book after book fast. Boom, 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 boom. And Kindle Unlimited, Amazon's algorithms in general, and particularly Kindle Unlimited, rewards that behavior, fosters it, pays bonuses for it. And those books then also show up on lists that Amazon refers to as bestseller lists, but are not in fact bestseller lists. They are weighted and curated to favor the Kindle Unlimited, and to some extent also the Amazon imprint releases. So take a look at some of these supposed bestseller lists, and you will see, number one, that they are dominated by Kindle Unlimited books because they are favored in the algorithms. And then go and look at bestseller lists like the USA Today bestseller list, or a bestseller list on Apple Books, and you will see very little, very little overlap. The Amazon supposed bestseller lists are not. They have nothing to do with the actual sale. I shouldn't say they have nothing to do with it. They have minimal connection with the actual sales numbers. And as long as we're on that topic, I don't know if I've said this on the podcast before, but in case you're not aware, New York Times also is not based on straight sales. It is, as they are proud to say, a curated list, which means they decide who is eligible to be on the New York Times bestseller list, and they don't necessarily count straight sales. The USA Today list, to my knowledge, is the most complete, pulls from the most sources, and is based straight out on sales. And in fact, if as I've had titles be on the US, multiple titles be on the USA Today bestseller list, and they are competing not only with books in their genre, but nonfiction. All the books, everybody's put together there. So to me, that's the truest by definition bestseller list. Isn't it fun? What else? I was trying to think of the other ways that these people scam is they will use like two names on a cover, but only one person is listed in the sales information, or vice versa sometimes. And then that other name is also not really a person. It's a front, but they will have a very simple Facebook page which is saying, "Oh, look at my friend who is the other person on the cover has a new book out." And so they're feeding each other. It's like an echo chamber, and that is their only purpose. So in this blog, I talk about some of the ways that you can spot these scammers, and one of them is to look at their bio. If I've and it's so easy to do this. You can just sort of skim down and you read a couple of these bios. They sound so similar. They have phrases that pop up in multiples of them. There'll be three authors all with the same phrase in their bio. They they don't sound like real people because they're not. And oftentimes they don't use an author photo, or they will use an author photo that is from they've bought the picture. And some enterprising authors, real authors, have done the reverse search on the photographs, and they're pretty easy to spot. Now, I can spot these people. Other authors can spot these people. But Amazon, with all their technological ability, have shown no ability or willingness to spot these people. And as I said, they reward them, and they reward them with within the basic structure of Kindle Unlimited, and then there are also all-star bonuses that rake in a lot of money for these people who are out there to make a quick buck. I maintain that they are not really authors. That they're if Kindle Unlimited closed tomorrow, oh, be still my beating heart. That would be so wonderful. If it closed tomorrow, these people would be gone in a couple days. They would be off looking for the next easy score. But people who are true authors, who want to write, who want to tell stories and share them with you guys, the readers, we would stick around. And it's very sad to a lot of us to see this happening in the writing world. It's a shame. And as I said, I hate that you all have to be detectives, but if you don't want to be scammed, and the other aspect is if you don't want to contribute, put money in the pockets of these people, unfortunately, you have to do the work that Amazon is not doing. And I will say, some people have asked about the other vendors. Kobo, I know for a fact, runs books through plagiarizing software before it will put them up. Apple has some safeguards as well. I believe Barnes & Noble does. I'm not as sure about that, but I believe they do. Now, one of the reasons it's happening so much on Amazon is because there's more money to be made there. But that also means that, unfortunately, you are safer as a reader staying away from Amazon. I don't like saying that, but it's true. If you're going to buy on Amazon, please be careful. Read the blog, watch for these red flags, be a detective, because otherwise you are going to be scammed and you are going to contribute, not knowingly, I realize that, or not willingly, to these writer mills, to the atmosphere that caused whoever this person is behind that name, Christiane Soroya, to plagiarize hardworking, legitimate authors. 34 of them. 34 authors, 51 books. And that stems from this atmosphere and from the ecosystem that Amazon has created with Kindle Unlimited and that scammers are exploiting. And Amazon is fully aware, has been told multiple times over a long period of year, to my personal knowledge. And it's not changing. In the meantime, another thing I will put in the show notes is a link to a list of the authors who have been plagiarized and their books. So that includes buy links. So you can see the real books, the wonderful original, and not the mishmash of bits and pieces that unfortunately some people bought and consumed as a supposed book. And in the meantime, I'm going to go off and try to work on my books, my real books that I write There's a hashtag going around of uses a little stronger language than I tend to, but I have written every darn word in my books. So I want to tell you that. Oh, and if there are any aspiring writers out there, the other thing I wanted to say is I do have a new title coming out. Um, it might even be out by the time the podcast comes out, or it should be very shortly. It is for writers and for those of us who, well, the title is Survival Kit for Writers Who Don't Write Right. So a lot of us are pantsers, but there are also people who are writing in other ways that are not considered right, in quotes. And this book is hard-won tips and tricks that I have found and put together over all the years of writing in my very strange process. And I hope it will help people. If you're interested in it, it's going to be on sale at all the retailers for your convenience at $2.99. But if you buy it directly from my ebook store, which you can get to through my website, I'm selling it for 99 cents. I'm not looking to make a killing on this book. I want to cover the expenses and then I want to share with the writers who don't write the way most outside people consider right, because there haven't been as many resources for us, and we need tips and tricks too. So I hope that will help some folks out there. I hope you have enjoyed this episode. I hope you're not too depressed after it. It's not a happy circumstance that this has happened. But I will tell you the flip side of that is the writer community and the readers and writers have come together, and some people in particular have done some darn good work. Bless their hearts for all the effort that they have put into tracking down the truth and the information. And that should make all of us feel good. So I hope you have a great week of wonderful reading. I hope it's all original reading. It's the words written by the person whose name is on the book. And that I will see you back here for another episode of Authors Love Readers Podcast. That's the show for this week. Hope you enjoyed it, and thank you for joining Authors Love Readers Podcast. Remember, you can always find out more about our guest authors in the show notes, and you can find out more about me at www.patriciamclinn.com. You can also send in questions to be asked of future authors at podcast@authorslovereaders.com. Until next week, wishing you lots of happy reading. Bye.